Drake and 21 Savage have just dropped their collab album called Her Loss. After a couple of weeks of anticipation, it's finally here, and in today's video, we're going to give you guys our official review of the album, and it's a very exciting album. Some people are loving it, some people are kind of feeling middle of the road about it, but if you guys do want to see our official first reaction to this album, check out the link in our description. We actually reacted to this on Patreon, but Ant, artist performance, let's get it started, bro. How you feeling?
Man, listen, it's an exciting feeling to see Drake rapping again. And I was talking about this with one of the boys on the weekend, how I feel like I'm back in 2015 again, like the timeline was in disarray, bro. Like there was so many people talking about the bars. There was so many people talking about Drake's performance, 21 Savage's performance. So many different polarizing opinions on where their strengths and weaknesses lie. And, just overall, I think on the artist performance, I will say this. I feel like 21 Savage kind of did play second fiddle to Drake on this album. It did not feel like a collaboration.
Drake was calling the shots.
It was, and I feel like that's normal. I also saw a statistic by Hip Hop by the Numbers this weekend on how, Drake had like 60+% of runtime on the album. 21 Savage was like in the mid-20s.
Someone made a joke that 21 Savage had 21% of the album.
But he still contributed a lot. And honestly, let's start off with 21 Savage, bro, because it allowed Drake to go into a different area with this album. Honestly, never mind. There's a completely different approach. So was CLB. And this is an area we haven't seen Drake attack in a very long time. So how do you think they complemented each other, and where do you feel like they both strived, and where do you feel like they maybe could have done better together?
And that's the thing that I want to talk about, is that because this is a collaborative album, the most important thing to me was going to be seeing the chemistry between 21 and Drake, and also kind of how they would push each other to get into uncharted territory. And like you said, it felt like Drake had most of the creative control, but when I am looking at their pairing and their chemistry, you get an amazing display of that on Rich Flex, the way that like Drake kind of starts off the song saying, 21, can you do something for me? Like the way that he introduces his verse was fire. Other great examples of their chemistry come on songs like On BS or Broke Boys, where they have this fiery back and forth. But I will say this, I wanted to see more of that. I wanted to hear more of them interrupting each other, setting each other up for punchlines, maybe sharing a hook. I feel like having more interplay could have been nice on the album, but I'm still happy with what I got in that regard.
I am too, and I want to say this about it. I do like that Drake had most of the runtime on this because, people were talking about, Drake's going to get carried by 21 Savage before this album was going to be coming out, and I think that it was the exact opposite case on this.
You think Drake carried 21?
Well, he had to, because he had most of the runtime on this, and it's just the nature of how much runtime he had on this. But what I like about it too is that you're getting a bunch of different dynamic performances from Drake on this album. So example, like you're going to get more of his darker performances on the first 3 tracks with Rich Flex, Major Distribution, and On BS. Example, on something like Major Distribution, starts off the song in more of a singing R&B bag, super somber production, and then boom, you get like this Tokyo Drift type beat, and then after that he comes in with this crazy fucking quick flow, bro, and absolutely engages you. And then you might get more of a meditative artist performance on something like Middle of the Ocean, where that's where Drake's taking his time. That's where I like him, like the 30 for 30 freestyle Drake, or like the Tuscan Leather sort of Drake, where everything is pronounced, everything is calculated. He's allowing you to understand the bigger picture. So where did you like Drake best on this album? Was it more on, let's say, the more energetic, sort of performances, on the darker performances, on more of the meditative stuff? Where did you find Drake strive best on this track
definitely
list?
Middle of the Ocean is a highlight. You're getting that sophisticated Drake, because on the rest of the album, you're getting more of that cruel and aggressive Drake, which is also kind of something I've been waiting to hear for a long time. Speaking about 21, I like the fact that he had more of this cold-blooded delivery and kind of sounded more monotone, because he's rapping slower. Overall, 21's kind of has slower delivery, while Drake is rapping faster on the album and has more of a dynamic vocal performances. One big standout again has to be a Rich Flex, when he has that 3-syllable pattern on the second half of the song where he raps, I'm Young Money CMB, I used to roll CMG, the house is not a B&B. Like the 3-letter pattern that he continues was amazing. Apart from that, I mean, there are certain critiques I have with the artist's performance.
Okay, let me start off with this. I really don't think Jumbotron Shit Poppin' should have made this album. And I know that's maybe going to be a hot take, and it obviously spoke to the Cardi fans or the Yeet fans, but I just did not see a place for this type of performance from Drake on this track list. Like,
he has so many styles. He doesn't have to do the whole Cardi thing.
It wasn't like that, like maybe he could have done it in a better way. Maybe it could have been introduced in a better way, but I just feel like it was unnecessary. And going back into, the whole vamp thing and getting into like the B-ad-libs and stuff like that, I just didn't feel like it suited this track list, but to each their own. Some people might have enjoyed it.
Also, 21's crooning, I think, on songs like Hours in Silence, for example, or a couple of other cuts, I feel like it's not really where his strengths lie. So
it's not where his strengths lie, but like example, in the context of Hours in Silence, what's interesting about that song is like I don't feel like 21 Savage did a bad job there. I feel like it was in good context of the song. Obviously, you know, you're not getting Chris Brown vocals there, like, but it still fit the song pretty well. But going into Hours in Silence, I like that performance from Drake because it gave me a Take Care sort of vibe. You know, it gave me something where like I go back to that track, it's super lengthy too, so it had to be a bit more dynamic. And once you get to the later half of it, bro, he's in this crooning bag, bro, and he doesn't stop.
It drags. That song.
Another disagreement.
Drags,
no, I don't
bro.
agree with that. I
like his performance. It just goes on for way too long, in my opinion. Back Outside Boy is another song where I think it has maybe the catchiest hook on the album, but it kind of felt like he was doing a reference track for someone like Gunna, or like kind of felt like a YSL song, to be honest with you. Still, I was a fan of it. But yeah, overall, I think the artist performance was great from the two of them. Like we were saying, I mean, going back to songs like Rich Flex or Major Distribution, the way that Drake is so like kind of easy with the transitions from going from the crooning to the hardcore rap, and 21 came in with these really clever, you know, punchlines that we'll get into the content. Do you agree with the great rating for
Absolutely.
that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it was a great performance in both of them. But let's talk about the content on this album. And interesting enough, you know, there was the whole thing, I was a certified lover boy, but honestly, never mind, it's her loss. I like that whole like play on the trilogy. And I wanted to see how they were going to be able to enter, you know, a certain lane together, right? Because 21 Savage does one thing, Drake does another. But, you know, when they've came together on songs like Sneakin' or Jimmy Cooks, or even Knife Talk, they found a really nice like middle point for their content matter. It gets usually dark, but it could also get romantic at certain times. Gets very braggadocious. But what I like about this album is that it wasn't overbig to the point where like there was too much dark content matter or there was too much romance. But it was a very toxic album.
Yeah, I think it's probably Drake's most toxic album. And I have a question for you, because there's no denying that like this kind of saw Drake go into, you know, the perspective of the Playboy, which, you know, he's done recently in the past. But there's this whole conversation of like, oh, you know what? Like Drake is 36. There should be more maturity in his subject matter. And this is how I feel about it. I'm okay with this. Like, this is Drake, you know, rapping about his life and what he's going through. Do I want to see him maybe have that shift towards more mature writing in the future? Absolutely. But when the time is right, I want it to be authentic. I want that to be a time where those are the thoughts filling his mind, and that's what he wants to share. He's done it on a couple of Lucy's, but to have kind of more of a mature subject matter for the substance of a whole album, that would be nice. But how do you feel about that? Do you think that he's maybe too old to have, you know, the album be concentrated with this?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's so many artists that carry out, you know, romantic track.
Future's doing it at 38.
Exactly. Like, there's people that are doing it later on in their life, and I still think it sounds great. And I mean, it's a signature staple within his career. I mean, you'll never lose the toxic content matter out of a Drake album, and why would you want to lose that? I mean, I've enjoyed it all the way through, and I don't feel like it was overbearing because those moments of maturity were shown throughout the track list. Example, Middle of the Ocean. Like, go into the writing on that track, and it's fucking phenomenal. Example, I actually want to pull up a bar here. Listen to this. So he makes 3 different references to three different NFL teams on this. Big Benjamins like the Pittsburgh Steelers. Drake, you got it. Robert Kraft sent the jet for us. That shit was patriotic. You would think we live in Baltimore, the way they raving about the latest product. And I love that type of luxurious, you know, wordplay from Drake because it gives you a nice break from like more of the toxic stuff that you get maybe later on in the track list. But yeah, the whole argument about like, you know, he's too old to be rapping about this stuff, that's bullshit, bro. You know, there's full of artists doing it, and he low-key does it the best. I'm being honest with you, man, and I really do enjoy it.
And yeah, you can't expect, you know, Drake to kind of go with a more concept approach. I mean, it's a collab album with 21. We're here for the fucking bangers at the end of the day. But I will say this, Drake took no prisoners here, bro. Like, the controversial bars were at an all-time high when you're looking at him going after, let's say, Ice Spice's abilities as an MC, when you're looking at the apparent Megan Thee Stallion diss, when you're looking at the subtle shots towards Kendrick Lamar, possibly, the Serena Williams' husband bar. Like, he really went in, bro. He went all the way in, and it was interesting to see him take that approach.
It was.
He really, you know, had no fucks to give, which was interesting. And he's also funny on this album, bro. Like, bars like, for your birthday, your boyfriend got you a party bus.
Like, yeah.
Or she's a 10 trying to rap, sound good on mute. Like, I had a good laugh, bro, going through some of these Drizzy bars. 21, though, had some of the best punchlines and one-liners on here. 2 sticks in my hand like I'm playing Wii.
I love that.
I got bullets for all the ops on my Oprah shit. Like, he really brought it to another level. Even Harry style numbers, it's a robbery. My guys go insane to catch a body on Major Distribution. those all fucking slapped, and they're some of the most quotable parts of the album.
Yeah, and listen, you know you're gonna get that from 21 Savage. He always delivers those types of quotables with like that sort of savage content matter. But 3 a.m. on Glenwood, 3 a.m. on Glenwood was such a great display of content matter for 21 Savage, and I'll let you do the explanation, bro, because honestly, I really do feel like this is one of the best written songs I've heard from 21 in a minute. Super vulnerable, talks about family content matter, talks about where he's at in his life right now and how he's viewing certain situations. So what did you get out of this track from 21?
First of all, throughout the whole album, I mean, 21 is either rapping about slashing or smashing. It's one of the two.
I like that.
But 3 a.m. and Glenwood had a different approach, right? I like this because it was a passing of the torch moment. It was Drake giving 21 Savage a timestamp song, but more importantly, giving him an opportunity to show what he can do as an MC on a very vulnerable kind of place over a Noah 40 should be beat. Like, it had all the kind of ingredients of a timestamp song, but now you had 21 doing it, and he goes into the PTSD that he suffered, of course, witnessing the death of one of his best friends when he was younger. Also, just him going through all the trials and tribulations of his life. It was heartfelt, it was poignant, and it was needed as kind of, a display of what 21 could do apart from what we're used to seeing him do. Apart from that, the cream of the crop lyrically is, of course, middle of the ocean like you referenced. But it was cool to see Drake assert his fucking dominance on the game, bro. Like, songs like, for example, Privileged Rappers, talking about rappers taking too much time to draw music. Songs like Broke Boys.
Is that where you had gotten the Kendrick reference on it? Yeah, but that could be like towards, like, let's say Travis Scott or Frank Ocean. So I guess, that's kind of open-ended, It
is.
But what's interesting, too, is that, like, I feel like they both came with this competitive nature that I've been wanting to see for a minute, But you're not going to get the most complex writing on here. You're not going to get, like, bars of the year on this stuff. Like, this was really a bangers album, and I really did enjoy it for that. So listen, content was good. Could we agree on that?
It was good.
All right. So what do you want to move on to? We go on to the features,
Let's do the features, bro. And first off, I think the idea of having rappers doing these ad-libs was a great idea. You had Lil Yachty do some. You had Lil Baby as well. And it was cool because they kind of added a spark towards certain songs, and it kind of added a fun element, especially on Back Outside Boys, also major distribution. That was a cool aspect. But how did you feel about the fact that we just got Travis Scott? Because the feature was great, but a lot of us wanted to see maybe J. Cole, Young Nudie. What do you think of this decision?
Well, I think it was a great decision just because of the flow of the album. Like, talking about a collaboration album, you can't jam it up with too many features, or else it takes away from the artists that are trying to perform on there. That's one. Two, it kind of gets overbearing, and it just kind of feels like maybe a whole compilation album to a certain extent. Like, you're not coming in here for a DJ Khaled album,
Exactly.
Like, stay home for that. And regardless, like, Travis Scott was a great addition to Pussy and Millions. I'm gonna be honest with you. Yeah, the best part on the whole fucking song, and if you had to get someone on that type of production, it was Travis Scott. Even going back to Genius and looking at the structure of the verses, I mean, Drake had his verse, 21 had something there, and then boom, you just get this huge fucking verse from Travis stuck right at the end there. And like you said, I think it was so cool to utilize Yachty in a position where, on Back Outside Boys, he was simply just doing ad-libs there, because it adds this sort of fun, creative bounce to the song that Yachty does well on, whereas if maybe he had a verse, maybe feels a bit out of place. And I want to say this too, if you have a lot more features, maybe it takes away from the solo tracks that you have on here. You have 3M on Glenwood, you have Middle of the Ocean. These are great solo tracks, and I like it when they're taking up the majority of the track list within a collaboration album, rather than having just useless features that don't necessarily add to the direction or vision of the track list, at least in my opinion.
We were speaking about this before the album dropped. We're like, you know what? If there's 0 features on this thing, that's totally fine, bro. It's a collab album after all, and like, you don't really want more than a couple of features. Travis had definitely the best flows and melodies on Pussy and Millions. Even his outro, that refrain was amazing.
Gets you very
really
excited
enjoyed
for
his
Utopia.
crooning. Very excited, bro. He really fucking showed out. So the features were great. Obviously, we didn't have many of them, but if we're gonna grade it based on what we did get, it was pretty fucking great.
Yeah, not only that, but just the decision making of the features themselves was great. Like, again, you don't want to get this too jammed up with too many people here that ruin the cohesiveness of this track list. So I do think the decision of having only one was well done. But let's get into the production, okay? Because you and I were also speaking about the production in certain videos before this, and we were also talking about it on the live stream. Where's he going to go with this? Are we going to get the classic Memphis samples? Are we going to be getting the darker type production that we all want to see, like we had maybe gotten on something, like on the second half of Jimmy Cooks? Are we going to get more trap-inspired stuff? Is some R&B stuff going to be making the track list? And honestly, bro, we got low-key all of it. So where do you want to start with this, man? Where were the highlights?
The highlights, I mean, first of all, just the A-list cast of producers that were a part of this thing. You had Noah 40 Shabib, you had Boy Wonder, you had Metro Boomin, you had Tay Keith, you had Filthy, you had Vinyls, you had some of the best producers in the game. And I think that this is primarily a southern trap soundscape. There's no debating that, and that's kind of what we did expect to get. But I do like how layered these beats are and how many transitions and beat switches you get on almost every song on this
almost every
thing.
song. Yeah, and I want to start off with probably Major Distribution, like I had spoken about it earlier. Like that transition from that softer R&B cut that you're getting maybe for the first 10 seconds, then after that, like when Drake drops his final bar and like that sort of singing mode, and it gets into like that Tokyo, drift sort of beat where like, your quick pace, bro, high, high beat per minute, bro, and like you're just engaged into the track. That's what I came for. Even at that, bro, like on Rich Flex, that second beat switch, bro, was absolutely disgusting. The keys on that were fucking incredible. More M's, bro. Metro Boomin can't do any wrong. You want to talk about a spooky soundscape, you got it on something like that. You want something more luxurious, you got it on something like Middle of the Ocean. You want a classic 90s R&B sample flip, you got it on something like Spin Bout You. So what I enjoyed about the soundscape of this album is that it wasn't one-dimensional where like it kept me bored, because we were talking about this. You're not going to get a bunch of free smokes on this album, but at least if they had to diversify, they did it in a proper way.
Definitely the best produced Drake album since Scorpion. I mean, Scorpion's tough to beat in terms of production because
I like that,
especially on side A. Amazing stuff. But I will say the sample selection was fire. You got the classic 90s R&B song Give Me Your Lovin'. You got the One More Time from Daft Punk on Circo Loco.
How do you feel about that?
It wasn't as good as it could have been. I will say that.
Because a lot of people are enjoying it right now.
Yeah.
So where do you think the disconnect is for you, and like where do you think people are fucking with it?
Yeah, I feel like the mixing with it was a bit off. It felt like the vocals were kind of super separate from the production itself, and I don't know. I felt like they could have done more with such an iconic sample. It could have felt like a bigger record. It could have maybe felt more grandiose like some of the other beats on this thing. Another thing, too, is like we're speaking about that sinister tone that you got in a song like More M's. You didn't have that, prominently throughout the whole thing. That's maybe a bit of a nitpick. It would have been cool to see him stick to that mood throughout the entire thing. But I do think that where this production strives the most is really when the production goes silent and when the producers leave room for 21 and Drake to go a cappella, because what ends up happening is that you crave those drums and those keys to come back. And once they do, it's like fucking bang, bro. It lifts up the energy once again.
It does lift up the energy, yeah. And that's what I was speaking about too, is that like through the track list, I really felt like there was no drags as far as productions go, where I was like, oh, that sounds off to me, Like, also, how do you feel about, let's say, going back to Jumbotron Shit Pop and like having Filthy on this album? Like, literally came out of nowhere, bro, to be honest.
It's a good beat. It's a good beat. Does it fit the soundscape? No.
No, like that was my only thing too, is like I would maybe like to see that on a Cardi album, give that to Yeet, but to be able to have that on like a Drake and 21 Savage collaboration album, I could have probably done
even Hours in Silence, not my favorite production.
You see, I like,
it's a bit slow tempo. It's a bit basic.
No, the synth lines towards the end, bro, where you get that melodic Drake crooning with his auto tune, bro, and when he's getting into that Take Care vibe, gave me some Club Paradise vibes, bro. I'm not lying to you. Like that's at least listen. That's the type of Drake I enjoy.
It felt like if the beat was more EDM inspired, it could have been an Honestly Nevermind.
But it wasn't, though, so therefore it gave me that type of vibe.
A highlight was Pussy in Millions when that second half came in and those horns came blazing through. That was a moment as well.
Like I also like how well calculated all the transitions were within the album, right? Because like you were saying, going back to Pussy in Millions, Travis starts off that verse, but the horns don't come in right away. They only come in like maybe 4 to 5 lines in, and then once he does end up coming in, boom, you're getting these beautiful fucking horns, and then Travis speeds up his rap. So what I also like about the production is that they perfectly complemented what 21 Drake and Travis were trying to do here, because he was the only feature on this. So also, how do you feel about Broke Outside Boys, bro? Because you got a super dark three song run with Rich Flex, Major Distribution, and On BS, but then you get the Back Outside Boys, a bit more bouncier, a bit more playful. Like, how did you like those breaks within the track list?
It was a good beat without a doubt. Like I said earlier, it felt like something that actually I think Wheezy might have produced it, because it did feel like more of like a YSL
it was Rio Des Right and Taz Taylor.
Interesting. Yeah. But yeah, that was a solid beat. But I do think that the highlights production wise would have to be Rich Flex for me, Pussy and Millions without a doubt. Broke Boys again. Like most of the songs where you have those multi-layered elements and you have those beat switches, I think that's kind of the headline when it comes to the production for this album, and for that reason I think it was great also.
Yeah, it was a great soundscape. Everything was super well calculated and always kept you guessing as you were going through it. But let's get into the replay value, okay?
Sure.
So I know you have problems with replay value with Honestly Nevermind. I know a lot of people, they use it for the summer. Maybe I'd put it down and they'll maybe get back into it once the weather starts getting nicer in certain areas of the world. But for the most part, I do feel like there's a fuckload of replay value within this track list. Off of the first listen, I knew that I was going to be taking a lot of songs out of here. I've been loving the front to back listen on this. Like, I've really been enjoying every single track on here except for Jumbotron. I'm going to be honest with you. But for the most part, I do feel like this is a nice listen, and it's unpredictable, bro. It's a bit all over the place as far as tracks go, but like, you're getting a lot of slappers on here, bro.
It's a smooth listen, bro.
A lot of top tier, Drake tracks from his modern run. So how do you feel about the replay value?
It's great. I think the decision to have 16 songs, could it have been toned down to maybe 14? Yes, but still, the 16 songs merits the full listen. I'm never really gonna, obviously I'll pluck songs out here and there, but I'm saying it won't be one of those albums like a Scorpion where I'll just kind of have my own playlist dedicated. Like, no, I can sit through this entire track list and enjoy the fuck out of it. Apart from that, I mean, I'm looking to see for the skips. That's always a conversation for replay value. Jumbotron, Ship Hoppin', of course, not really for me. Hours in Silence, I don't see myself playing all that much. That's really it, bro. Everything else on here is quality, and I see myself revisiting. The outro, that's the one that I'm unsure of. Like, that's still the one that I need more time to digest and see how I feel about it.
I'm on that same page too. Yeah, I'm kind of going through the whole track list, and I'm starting to see like what I'm fucking with and with what I'm not. But to be honest with you, if I'm just looking at this track list right now, the 3-song run of Rich Flex, Major Distribution, and On BS, one of the coolest 3-track runs of the year, to be honest.
Best 3-track run of the year for me.
Bro, like one of the best
in terms of enjoyment.
Awesome way to start off the album. Besides that, I mean, even Spin About You, bro, I'm in love with this collaboration between them two. It was so sick for like more of like a romantic sort of track for both of them where they're getting a bit more vulnerable.
We have to convince Mark of that song, bro. He's not on it.
Yeah, he's not on it, but it's okay though. We'll convince him one day. But even something like Treacherous Twins was well done as well. Pussy and Millions. The only real track I'm really not going to be going back to is probably Jumbotron. I'm being honest with you. That's pretty much it on my end. And as you were saying, it was a cool listen from start to finish. Like, I really feel like this is one of the first Drake albums in a minute where like I'm gonna be able to start it, I'm gonna be able to finish it, and I'm enjoying every single moment of it.
Especially for the timing of when it came out. I'm gonna be bumping the fuck out of this, in this fall and winter period because of how ominous and dark it is as a soundscape. So this is really gonna carry out a lot of my listening in the coming months. And like we're saying, bro, little to no skips, amazing replay value without a doubt.
Amazing replay value. And we're Drake fans. It's always nice to get a fucking Drake album that ends up hitting. So let's get into overall thoughts, man. I mean, listen, definitely did not disappoint. I'm really happy we ended up getting this album, especially later on in the year, because I was waiting for something super exciting to happen, and they definitely delivered. I really liked 21 Savage's contributions to this album. Do I feel like maybe he could have added a bit more runtime? Yes, but I don't feel like it's a flaw with the album because Drake did a fantastic job on here. You're getting a lot of memorable tracks on this. I do like the way they started off the album. I like the diversity within the soundscape. I love Travis Scott as the only feature on here. I think it was a well-executed decision for the features. So overall, I think it's a great album.
Listen, bro, I mean, if you're here for bangers and you want a track list that's going to fucking make you turn the fuck up, this is the album for you. And I feel like if you're truly a Drake fan, it's impossible not to enjoy this listen. And going into this, it kind of feels like an expensive manual made for promiscuous boys. You know what I mean? That's like the kind of vibe that I feel with this album. Apart from that, you're catching Drake and 21 at their most hedonistic, their most comedic, their most ludicrous at times too. And it's not meant to be this crazy work of art. It's just meant to be an entertaining and fun album to bump. And that's exactly what it is. They played on their strengths. They gave you these multi-layered bangers. They gave you these trap and R&B crossover joints that were fucking fire. And a lot of major highlights, bro. Maybe not one of the most consistent albums of the year, that's for sure. But I could see this kind of hopping into my top 10 to top 15 range for the albums of the year list. And again, bro, that 3-track run, fucking mega bangers.
Absolutely. So listen, great
album. Drake came back. It's not peak Drake. It's not up there with his best work, but he brought back that enthusiasm, that flair, and it is a return to form after these last two projects.
You know what's
we
also
got,
cool
you know?
about this project? I really do feel like the community is fucking with it as well.
Absolutely.
It's one of the first projects from Drake in a minute where like you're seeing the whole community jump on this and absolutely junk it. So listen, guys, that was our official review to Her Loss. Let us know in the comment section how you're feeling about this album. And like Lou mentioned at the beginning of this episode, we did a full live album reaction to Her Loss on our Patreon plan. If you guys want to visit that, link in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching this, and we'll catch you on our next review.